Welcome. My name is Ishit Vachrajani. I'm an enterprise strategist with AWS. We are here to talk about innovation strategies to accelerate growth and new product development. And I'm thrilled to be joined by Barbara Salami, Vice President of Digital at Moderna. Barbara, welcome. Can you please introduce yourself and tell us a bit about Moderna and your role with the company?
Absolutely. Thank you, Ishit. It's an honor to be speaking with you. So I am a biomedical engineer by training, but have spent the bulk of my career in commercial roles within pharmaceutical industry, and with a very keen focus on digital data and analytics. I I'm the lead for digital supporting the commercialization efforts at Moderna, with a keen focus on ensuring that every stakeholder who wants our medicine, who wants information about us, can get it in an equitable, simple, and convenient way. At Moderna, our focus is messenger mRNA, which is an information molecule that is required for protein production. And what we do at Moderna is use this platform and technology to send instructions to our bodies to produce specific proteins that could help treat, cure, and or prevent diseases.
Moderna has really transformed into a biopharma enterprise over the last 10 years with a diverse portfolio of mRNA based vaccines and therapeutics. And innovation, I'm sure, has played a major role in that. How do you define innovation as a leader, and how does that translate into your team and rest of the company?
Yeah, thanks a lot for the question. So I think over the years, I've really come to appreciate the importance, first and foremost, when I think about innovation, is really understanding your customers, stakeholders intimately. So making sure we understand their needs, um, pain points, what makes them tick, and marrying that with, what we believe the future prospects are. And I believe once you're armed with that information, then you can really get into the next stages, right? Building a deliberate, hypotheses based experimentation process to ensure that we can test, learn, making sure that we have the right, and I would say a really modern digital infrastructure that is based on, having the right microservices architecture, is API first, cloud based, and clearly headless. And then really also looking at having the right partners. We wouldn't buy everything. We're not going to build everything. We really know what our strengths are, and looking for partners that we believe also have a similar DNA, or I would say behaviors and values. And then last but not least, making sure that we are co-creating with the users or the customers that we are designing for. And at Moderna, that's really a fundamental way in which we approach everything. We start first, really understanding who, the why it's even important and why to be relevant, and then we then get into very deliberate builds of solutions, really pursuing parallel paths to make sure that we can quickly identify the best options and deliver with urgency.
Great. And I think that is why we are so proud of this partnership with Moderna, because as you know, at Amazon, we think about innovation as starting with the customer and then working backwards from there, which aligns with how you're thinking about driving innovation. Uh, One of the pieces that you talked about is it's about sort of driving this change constantly. And for that, maintaining a culture of innovation throughout the company is crucial. How do you ensure that? How do you nurture that culture of innovation?
It starts from the top, but I also believe that we have a really nice bottoms up approach. But from the top, our CEO, our leadership team is really keen on making sure that everyone is crystal clear on the direction we're headed. Right? We foresee ourselves as being 100+ drug company, in the next 10 years. So what that means is we don't really have any room to slack. But it also and what we hear from our leadership team are really important principles around pushing past possibilities. Always go for the moonshot. Never hesitate. act with urgency, remove viscosity, right? We can't act with urgency if there are lots of things in between that are slowing us down, whether it's how we make decisions, whether it's, processes that have not been set up. So making sure we're very clear about that. I'm not afraid to push, and challenge the status quo. These are all things I would say, fundamentally make Moderna a very, very different organization, and really ingraining the fact that we are not a single product company, but a platform company that has the ability to really change the entire world with the medicines that we would be producing over the next few years. And I think there's really great alignment. The other thing that's really exciting as we start thinking about how we are ingraining it is just by the sheer nature of what Moderna is, who Moderna has become over the last year, we are getting, the most energized, passionate individuals coming into the organization who really want to do something different, who want to make a difference. And so it makes it very easy for us to tell the innovation story, or 10x story as we describe it. And really get lots of individuals coming together to rally around it. The other piece, and I talk a lot about culture because technology is a really important enabler of innovation, but it is the culture, it is the people that make it happen. And that's why I spend a lot of time really thinking about that. But collaboration is also really critical, and it's really it's ingrained in our culture, day-to-day culture. And part of how we also do that, just to make sure that we continue to collaborate appropriately, is really thinking about our programs and initiatives in terms of value streams. So essentially, I'll give you a classic example. If we are looking to build out a digital commerce ecosystem, even though the front end may live with a different group that's focused on user experience, in reality, there are intersections with how we think about pricing and the pricing team. There are intersections with supply chain and manufacturing. And so the value stream really forces, right, alignment across all of those different functional areas with a very clear target for when, how, and what we want to deliver to our customers. And I really love that because it really ensures that we are all on the same page. And that, again, is another fundamental way in which Moderna operates.
That makes sense. I want to double click on one of the things you said there around new product development, that it's not about having one successful product, but building sort of a platform, culture, and technology that supports that constant innovation. Can you talk a little bit about how has Moderna done that, and what role has cloud played in driving that new product innovation?
So this is where, and I talk a lot about culture, but I think this is really where technology, to your point, has made a significant difference. Initially, when we started the process, the innovation process, probably about six years ago, we were still operating, as having data information databases, and while we were doing some advanced analytics, I would say we're not really using the full computational power that we could get out of the Amazon cloud ecosystem. And today, it's truly been transformed by leveraging the AWS cloud backbone, whereby our scientists actually don't have to physically use vials to basically mix or even assess the impact of our potential mRNA computations. And what we are doing is using a web-based portal that taps into our drug design lab, and everything, right? The entire assessment of the potential viability of our medicines is done digitally. And we're able to do that because of the power of the AWS cloud.
So, Barbara, one part of scaling this innovation and new product development is taking that culture of experimentation and innovation and then also scaling it into part of commercialization rapidly. How is Moderna thinking about that?
And thanks a lot for the question. The rates at which Moderna continues to develop new potential medicines from a clinical standpoint is amazing. The scale at which it's being done and the speed, and it's all grounded in what you just described as this idea of experimentation. From a commercial standpoint, we are truly beginning to lean in, and I think I mentioned this earlier, and trying to understand how potential consumers, patients, and even those who are part of the care ecosystem want to engage with us. So we're out there trying to do research. And we're also being very deliberate. Moderna is not, just as we're a platform organization and not a one product organization, Moderna is a global organization, and we do understand that there are different market archetypes. And consumers, healthcare providers in these markets are very different. So we are really starting out. We've been very deliberate about defining hypotheses for different paths we want to go down. And typically with the hypotheses, it really lends itself to options that we could explore. We are very deliberate about exploring and testing in parallel at different markets. So this is not, it's not always going to be start with US, and when you learn from the US, scale. We try to get learnings at the same time from different markets, and from and just thinking about other tactical ways in which we're really embedding experimentation is making sure that even down to content, we're beginning to think about multiple pieces of content, really starting with many different messages and ways in which we can communicate, so we truly have the opportunities to test and learn. And beyond the initial setup with the hypotheses, the multiple paths for solutioning, we're also really very deliberate and really looking to ingrain right now very rapid ways in which we can continue to create more solutions and options during the course, right? So it's not just about the initial setup, but making sure that we do have an environment where we can quickly learn, we can create new content, we can stand up new proof of concepts as we learn. And so it's pretty much, maturing, but really excited about how we're trying to borrow from our colleagues in R&D to really build a truly different commercial organization.
Fantastic. I want to double click on the culture of learning, because technology is changing at such a rapid pace. What's your strategy to stay on top of this rapidly changing environment? And how do you sort of ingrain that culture of learning that stays up to date with what is happening?
So, learning, right, has different realms. So start with, the technology, which is a critical and key enabler. At Moderna, beyond, having the standard enabling functions for digital, we also have very deliberate centers of excellence around technology innovation, data and AI, really all which are critical. And those roles and those teams are really part of our organization to make sure that we are always paying attention to the tip of the spear and bringing in some of those platforms. I would say the other piece that we've done to really support not just the learning, but pivot where it makes sense is we're building an ecosystem that's truly designed to be flexible, composable, extensible. And that's one of the reasons why, leveraging the AWS backbone, as well as, some of the extended partnerships we're having is super critical, because what it means for us is as we learn, we're able to very quickly, as we learn, and I would say at the pace, hopefully learn and pivot at the pace at which consumers and customers are changing and their needs and expectations are changing. We have a platform that enables us to also switch things out or potentially innovate very quickly. The other piece around learning, which is important, and that's really the intelligence for how we understand customers. We are currently, and I would say we really have a very, very ambitious goal to build what we're calling an autonomous intelligence and insights generation engine. And the only way in which we believe we'll be able to do it is have, the back end technology that supports us so that we do have the right integrated backbone. And this is also where we are looking to partner very closely with AWS, or continue, I'll say really extend our partnership with AWS to make sure that we have the right backbone. Then there's last mile. We can have the technology, we can, get all the data we need. And one of the key pieces that we're beginning to look at from a learning standpoint, beyond, test and learn experimentation, it's just, how do we ensure that we have the right information for the different functional leads and areas at the time they need it, right? How do we get rid of, unnecessary PowerPoint presentations? How do we make sure that these insights can get delivered in real time to everyone's inboxes, to your cell phones? That's really the ambition we have. And for those who, I mean, everyone knows of Moderna. Every people can anticipate what it's like. In reality, we didn't really have any commercial infrastructure because we didn't expect to be where we are today. And so a lot of when I describe, we are, it's because we're fully in build mode at this point. But just wanted to point out that we're thinking about learning from what the technology, the enabling technology, how we integrate data seamlessly, and ultimately how we enable last mile delivery of the insights.
So it's a great story of increasing business agility all throughout, not only in sort of testing out new ideas, but then when they succeed, sort of creating a brand new machine to commercialize this using the power of technology and data that you have. Um, as you grow, and sometimes when organization grow, the complexity grows and increases as well with that. How do you make sure that the barriers to agility do not stand in the way as you scale and grow?
We make sure that everybody understands their accountability. We also talk about this idea of every single person at Moderna is an owner. And I think why this is really important is because we really want to make sure that as you are leading, a certain capability or building a program, that you are stopping to ask yourself, if this were my own personal business, how would who would I pull in to make sure that I have all the information I need? Who would I pull in to partner with to make sure that, we're collaborating appropriately and not missing any gaps? How do I make sure that I stay in tune with what's happening out there in the market with consumers so that I can react as quickly as possible? How do I remove viscosity? Who would I escalate to if I feel things are going closely, and how do I create an environment where I can be bold enough to drive change? And that for us is like really, I mean, that's quite frankly, how we are trying to really ingrain behaviors that we believe would translate to positive outcomes for each and every one of our stakeholders globally. And when we start talking about barriers, right, there's the tension that I think we find ourselves in with high growth right now is acting with urgency, being resilient, and also the tension of, well, if I have to act with urgency and I have to be resilient, do I have time to collaborate? And so, this is where we try to really think about, how we strike the balance for sure, because everyone is having to build from scratch. And sometimes it's we find ourselves, truly in parallel paths and having to be very deliberate about, pausing. And the other piece I would say is, I think the speed of decision making as we're getting larger, it used to be, a very quick, come together 10 minutes, 15 minutes. But now because we are truly in a very complex matrix organization, just, decision making is one that slows down. And I think what's great is there's a lot of empowerment, kind of going down from the C-suite to other leaders to have the ability to make some calls and decisions, right? As long as they've really weighed kind of the upsides and the downsides of decisions they're making.
Sure. So a clear purpose and then empowering the front line to act within that purpose to really move at that speed and agility helps you keep that culture going. I want to talk about failure. How do you deal with failures when you're inventing, when you're creating new products? Some of the ideas may work, some of the ideas may not work. How do you deal with failure?
I think this comes down to maybe my last point around, how do you really weigh, right, the upside? So first and foremost, maybe I should just say that at Moderna, and we are absolutely encouraged to try new things, to pursue parallel paths. I mean, that is a very, very important and clear mindset. So what that inherently means, right, is you will be pursuing three things and four things, and not all of them would work, right? And our goal is to quickly test these out and figure out the best path forward to really solve the pain point or the problem we're trying to address. So by the nature of that, right, everyone is truly encouraged um, to fail fast. I'm going to say fail fast, learn fast, and succeed soon. If I were to use like cliche words here, but beyond that, I think the other piece that's really important to talk about in terms of failure is that we also have conversations about, well, when you failed, it's really critical not to just put it in a locker and walk away. It's important to take a step back and ask yourself, well, what exactly about it made it fail, right? Because those learnings make sure that in the future we can avoid repeating the same mistakes. And I think that's just as important. So our CEO would say, you make a mistake the first time, the question would be, what did we learn? Make it the second time, I'm like, he will say, well, I'm probably not going to be too happy. And make it the third time, it then really translates to being clumsy and negligent. So I think it's really important that everyone understands failure in terms of its full context. And that's one of the pieces that is also being ingrained in the culture. As you know, in R&D, clinical development, it's never it's just part of the nature. When you start moving into commercial, where we are really talking about dollars and cents, people start to get a little bit more risk averse, and really helping them understand that our hypothesis-based approach, pursuing parallel paths, learning from what works and didn't work is all part of how we would innovate and drive change for everyone in the world.
So, Barbara, I want to switch gears and ask you about what is next for Moderna and what are you most excited about?
So for Moderna, we're charging forward. COVID and what we've done for the world is only the starting point for Moderna. We have many modalities and opportunities to really change the world, from how we're thinking about leveraging the mRNA platform and technology to really combat some of the most difficult rare diseases in the world, to really the personalized cancer vaccine, to thinking about what role we can play and how we could use the same platform to really create healthier hearts for everybody on the planet, and not forgetting still the importance around a lot of the viruses that continue to wreak havoc, right, to the world, whether it's CMV, whether it's RSV, and even thinking about flu. So they're really exciting opportunities. I think I mentioned earlier that we fundamentally believe that with this platform, and as we continue to learn, we will be a company that has 100+ products. So for me, personally, I am, truly honored and humbled to be part of Moderna at this point where, I also believe in, the possibilities. As an immigrant from Africa, I never imagined the day when I'll be having conversations with my family and friends back there who are like, wow, does it mean that, we may never have, this, maybe we could eradicate cholera? Does it mean that, we wouldn't have to worry about, paying super expensive costs to get medicines, because this platform will actually democratize access to every single person. And you could potentially get a suite of medicines to really help potentially cure and prevent any diseases that you may already naturally be predisposed to, based on where you are geographically, or just based on what you have, kind of inherited through familiar ways. So that is, for me, what excites me. I think the other piece that I would say is exciting is, what it means for my children and, my grandchildren. That yes, we could be in a place where everybody can be hale and hearty. So I am super excited about all of the possibilities.
That's very powerful and inspiring vision, and I'm really excited about what comes next, Barbara. As you look back at your journey and what's to come, what is some of the lessons learned that you would like to share with executives who are starting out and thinking about uh, accelerating their own innovation and their own growth journeys?
I will start first and foremost, just say be vulnerable. Um, Understand that you don't know it all, you can't solve it all. Look for the right partners. I think one of the things that I struggled with, early in my career was not really recognizing the power of collaboration and who, right? And how you think about teammates and colleagues. Everyone, great ideas can come from anywhere and anyone. And I think really opening up the pool to your colleagues to understand their thoughts around how you solve problems. Obviously, staying very, very close to the end users of whatever products, whether it's the medicines or the digital experiences you want to deliver, and really making sure you get input from the um, from the users is also critical. I think the other piece I would say is be flexible. Um, and this really kind of ties to not any there isn't a single journey that's always a straight road, right? I mean, not most journeys are not a straight path. And understanding that in your journey, there would be ups and downs, and your opportunities to learn and pivot very quickly, fearlessly in the face of new data is also really important. And so that's why for me, I just think, being vulnerable and humility and vulnerability are probably, I would say, two of the most important traits for leaders who want to really start a robust innovation journey. And without question, you should be relentless. Do not take no for an answer, because there's always a way.
Great lessons there and great advice, Barbara. Thank you so much for sharing your journey and spending time with us today. Thank you.
Thank you.